I'm Allie, and today on Plotopsy Dissecting Stories, we're diving into the crime and nostalgia of Scott R. Welvaert's Grayduck. Let's get started. Which character surprised you the most while writing?
I'll have to say Amber Spencer, her character surprised me the most because she wasn't in the first draft. She showed up in revisions when my wife told me that that the character of Jerry needed like a Jiminy Cricket on his shoulder to make sure that he didn't do anything too terrible. So that's probably the character that surprised me the most.
Amber's such an integral character, I genuinely can't imagine the book without her. She feels like a character driven by integrity, even when life sidelines her. What drew you to writing her that way?
Again, this kind of goes back to the first question, but in the first draft, Amber wasn't there, and when I got to the end of the story, it was flat. There was just there wasn't a good dynamic between the characters, in the interplay, and there just was no emotional payoff at the end, and so I had to go through revisions and create Amber as a new character, and she made the book. I mean, if the book wouldn't be finished if Amber wasn't inserted in there to act as, a somewhat, partner to Jerry and Danny, or a friend of those, and then also, her keeping everyone in check as far as, making sure that, Jerry isn't, as big of a jerk as he could be. So Amber, definitely.
Which version of Jimmy did you enjoy writing more? Teenage Jerry or adult Jimmy?
For me, I like them both because it's one of my favorite characters that I've written. I do like Jerry as a kid because the nostalgia of childhood and doing all those things and, raising a ruckus and not listening to parents and all that. But at the same time, I mean, Jimmy as an adult kind of shows what we have to go through going from childhood to adulthood, where we have to like rein it in. We can't be all reckless and crazy. So I would probably have to tip my hat to the young Jerry just because freedom, recklessness, fun.
I loved the scenes with teenage Jerry. They feel so carefree and fun at first, and then turn deeply dark and emotional. So, speaking of the childhood scenes, which feel very nostalgic, but in hindsight, they're very tragic, how did you balance innocence with the looming darkness of what's to come?
For that, how to balance it, it was that's why I chose the dual narrative part of it was, to kind of create that almost memento like structure where, the end of one actually is the beginning of the other and they kind of twist. But that's how I kind of separated it because, and especially using the seasons too, I wanted to use winter to be more harsh, a more cold season to indicate that part of Jimmy's life as being a little more harsher than his childhood, and then also summer, for the childhood stuff. So that's how I kind of kept them separated. It kind of the seasons set the tone, and especially the different settings too, more than northern Minnesota to Chicago. I felt there's a really great duality in that.
Memento is one of my top five movies ever, and I can definitely see the similarities between Christopher Nolan's work and Grey Duck. The friendships in this book feel very authentic. Did you draw from real childhood dynamics while writing them?
Yes and no. I am I'm definitely not Jerry. I wasn't that cocky as a kid. I did, however, have those adventures. I mean, and that's something being a Gen Xer. That's kind of what we did. I mean, parents weren't there, and when they were there, they weren't there. And so we just got to be able to go out and do the fun things for that. And for me, that is nostalgia. But at the same time, I think what I did with my characters in that part was to populate them with other like amalgams of people that I've met later on in life, and kind of imagining them as how they would be as teenagers in my era. I also wanted to make sure that the characters played off each other really well, and we had a semblance of normality and insanity and humility and that kind of thing. So
The novel feels very character driven despite having crime and mob elements. Do you see yourself as a character first writer?
yes, emphatically yes. I think a good story is one thing, but if the story doesn't have great characters, rich, developed, authentic characters in it, then they don't really serve the story. So whenever I start out with a story, I'm like, all right, well, who's going to be the character, and then what is their back history? And I tend to give all my characters deep flaws because humanity that's perfect. I mean, we're not perfect, but any character that is perfect, you're gonna have a hard time creating a tense environment, in a book. So, yes, very fast forward on the character development stuff.
Well, and because of that, the mob elements never overwhelmed the emotional core of the story. Was that balance intentional from the beginning?
The balance, the balance, it wasn't there in the beginning, but I came to it because the impetus of this story was actually, watching and reading Harry Potter and, noticing that Hermione has a bag of holding. And then my thought was, Hermione's got scruples and she's ethically, a good human being. But what would someone that isn't ethical do with that bag of holding? And that's how I got started down the road with Jerry and his bag. And I knew that the best way to get into that would be, the mob angle. But then when I wanted to fill in the backstory and stuff, then it came in with, I got to set it up with the childhood and start the characters there, and then lead them into the mob life. So yeah, it is a mob story, but it's not totally a mob story. There's a lot of cordage in this braid that makes it a rich and complex story.
If readers could take one thing away from Grayduck, what would you want it to be?
Well, I would say that the thing that I would want readers to take away from it is, number one, childhood is kind of that freedom thing. So do what you can there, but when you do grow up, you can't be Peter Pan, and you have to make those tough decisions, and especially in this story where Jerry and his friends had to make the toughest of decisions as teenage characters. I wouldn't wish that upon any teenager, but but then also, making sure that you learn from that and making the right decisions later on in life, which can affect you even greater. So that's how I'd answer that one.
Thank you so much to Scott R. Welvaert for being here today, and please go check out Grayduck. I'll link it in the comments below. And join us next week for another Plotopsy.